welcome in. Thank you so much for joining us today here on Zoom for our wonderful Wisdom from the Wild Tales with Tales Youth Edition. Now, this is a very special day. So you're joined by me. I'm Sheyla. I'm going to be one of your hosts for the evening. And behind the camera, we have Jason working on all the technical aspects. But I am especially excited to have here by my side my co-host for today's program, Julie Henry, the author, one of three authors, I should say, of the subject of our program today, this lovely, lovely book, Wisdom from the Wild, Leadership Tales with Tales for Youth. Hi, Julie. How are you doing?
Hey, good, Sheyla. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so glad. And I mean, I can say we're all happy to be here, right? So not only are we coming to you live from Mote, we are coming to you from Mote's newest addition to our organization, Mote Science Education Aquarium, Mote out here at UTC. This is our newest location that we've expanded to, and we are so, so glad to be here in this new space, not only delivering this educational programming to you, but now having all the new facilities to deliver even more educational programming. Yes, we are so honored that you're here joining us today. And like I said, we're going to be talking all about Julie's newest book. We're going to talk about leadership, our paths to leadership, the importance of youth leadership. You know, talking about different stories, playing some games along the way as well. And we're going to have a whole lot of fun doing it. We're also going to talk about the Youth Ocean Conservation Summit. That'll be taking place here at Mote November 15th. So we've got a whole lot to talk about, Julie, don't we?
Yeah, and we were just saying, if you can't be under the water, it's best to be near the water. So I have to say that this is such an amazing space. And part of the thing we're going to share with you, and we hope that you'll participate and share your stories, because all of you probably have connections somehow with, if not Mote, then whatever aquarium that was influential to you in your life so far, or maybe it was just the good old fashioned ocean or any kind of marine or aquatic, being under a lake and just seeing, you know, marine life, aquatic life up close and personal. But this is where we want to bring you to today. And so anytime this inspiration can be, you know, right next to us as we talk about both the leadership lessons from wildlife and wild places, but also just the constant inspiration and reminder that nature is really all about change when it all comes down to it. And that's my favorite part, is every time I walk into an aquarium, I see something that I didn't know before. In fact, when Mote opened, Sheyla, I'll tell you that my favorite part about this whole place was the octopus, because the octopus, I'd never seen an octopus so active.
I know.
And it was super cool. And I know this is maybe projecting just a little bit, but it was like the octopus was like, all right, this is new. We're going to like test this out and like explore over here. And then it has a super cool tunnel that they can go through to another part of its exhibit. And it was just the coolest thing.
Yeah, one of our newest residents here at Mote is Brizzy, our giant Pacific octopus. And I also love her so much, Julie, that I made her sort of like the mascot for this year's YOCS event, Youth Ocean Conservation Summit. So she's on the back of the shirts. She is incredible. And yes, aquariums bringing this wildlife to participants, to guests like yourself is so, so crucial. And I mean, I'm in here every day, and even still, I find new ways to be amazed by everything. And even in here, so we're in our marine ecology teaching laboratory. So this is just one of the spaces where we do the education work of Mote. And not to be overshadowed, behind us are Booger and Smiley, two East Carolina diamondback terrapins. And so it was only fitting that, given the subject matter that we're covering today and that you covered in your book and all those examples that you drew of leadership from the wild, that we have wildlife here with us today, and that we always keep that connection in mind, right? Because we're not separate from nature. We very much are a part of nature ourselves. And so it only makes sense to draw wisdom, not only from other humans, other members of our species, but other species as well, and see how things are done in the animal kingdom. And before we kick off, Julie, we'll take a closer look at Booger and Smiley, of course, because they're just too darn cute. But I think we should give the viewers a little bit more background on us. If this is their first introduction to maybe Mote, but especially either of us, they'll need to know us before they know our leadership stories. And as we walk hand in hand, exploring really all of these concepts together. So by all means, please take it away.
Yeah, I think that's something that you should do your whole life, right? Yeah. So we're going to get into our personal stories, and I want to encourage you to share your stories too in the function through Zoom, and just even outside of this webinar, is understanding each of your journeys, not only as you're connected to aquariums, but connected to leadership. My kids who are my co-authors with me on this book are always saying, Mom, oh my gosh, stop talking to people. I'm like, but I'm so interested in people's stories because this is how you become the person that you are and the leader that you are. So for me, my story with Mote Sea, but really Mote Marine Laboratory, started when I was a kid. So I grew up in Chicago dreaming of the sea, and I loved growing up in the Great Lakes in Chicago and in Cleveland, but I really dreamt of being under the water in the ocean. And so my family used to come on vacation, as many families do in Florida. And we would go to the old Mote Aquarium at this point, and it was awesome because it was so raw and up close. And I just saw things I had never seen. I remember walking along the beach and seeing all the coquinas that bury into the sand and then trying to take them home and ill-advisedly putting them in a bucket in the refrigerator. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. I'm gonna keep them alive. That was not the case. So I took them back. I contributed back to nature's recycling at that point. But after coming on vacation for a number of years, I dissected a shark actually in outside Cleveland, Ohio, in my high school, Westlake High School. So one of the people, I really want you to know that this book is dedicated to 4 mentors and teachers in my life. And the first of which was my high school AP biology teacher, because in Westlake, Ohio, he gave us a shark to dissect. And I was fascinated. And I really thought that this was going to be my future. And so when I went to college at Miami of Ohio, which is in Southern Ohio, my family decided to move to Sarasota. And so I was studying in Ohio, and all of a sudden they said, well, why don't you just come down and live at home and intern here? So I really wanted to get an internship in the shark program, but I had waited too long and all the intern spots were filled up. And so I thought, well, okay, what else do I want to do? And I wasn't really sure that I wanted to be in education because I was really, really shy at the time. Like, I also want you to hear that from me. Like, everything you're seeing is learned. I would prefer, in fact, I have hit off stage at a school play and would not come on. It was my turn because I was not having it. No. So I've had to learn all this. But what happened is when I got this internship in the education department, and all of a sudden I realized how interested I was in everything. And I get to learn about mangroves, and I get to take you to teach about mangroves. And all of a sudden, even though I was shy and I'm still introverted by nature, my nature, that it was not my driving force anymore. And I just became so excited that I couldn't stand it. So that was my earliest connection to Mote, was coming here on vacation and then getting hooked up from an internship. And then the story goes on from there. But I want to hear about you because I don't know your story and how you got connected to Mote.
Well, Julie, you're for quite a wild ride, as is the rest of our viewers. My journey to Mote, as my entire career, is a bit unconventional in nature. It spans medicine, international pageantry, modeling, scientific communication, and of course, education is what ultimately brought me here. And Julia, I just want to say, before I kick off, thank you so much for sharing that point that you were really shy in your youth, and even by nature still are an introvert yourself, even though you're doing hard things, right? You're getting up here and talking in front of a camera like she's known all of you her whole life, because I think sometimes people look at the end product and tend to imagine that there's something innate about that person, that this must come really naturally, right? That you were born the leadership extraordinaire, the confident woman that you are, and that you always had it in you. No way you did. But there's also something to be said about the virtue and the value in continuing to practice skills, even when they make you a little bit uncomfortable, and you're out of your shell, you're kind of growing, right? They call it growing pains for a reason. It's because oftentimes there's things to overcome in that. And so thank you for sharing that point. I think that's such an important, honestly, column of what leadership is and what growing is. And so for me, similar to Julie, I was in some ways a bit of a shyer kid, very to myself, but my story by the water started really from when I was born. I'm actually from the Caribbean. So I was born in Cuba in a very, very small village. So small, in fact, that there was no hospital. So my family had to go to the next town over for me to come into the world, but 10 blocks in total. So Gabriel, Cuba, in the most rural parts of the Havana province of the island. And when I was very young, I moved to the US And so from there, started school like any regular kid, and was for the first time in my life away from the water. Still loving to be outside, climbing trees, interacting with animals. I grew up on a farm in Central Florida, and so I always had an interaction and a connection with nature and the animals. But again, I was a little bit far from the water. And because I'm the first generation in my family to actually end up going to college and to really pursue a career, I guess, this visible, I didn't know that marine biology or many of the sciences were really an option for me. I had like a few set categories of what like a career could be and what success could mean for myself. And so from a young age, I started pursuing medicine. And actually always loved science and really focused all of my efforts there. When I was 16, I actually published like a meta-analysis about the gene mutation that causes conjoined twins with FSU during a summer program. And then from there, got in front of the eyes of a few of the Florida colleges. I ended up going to the University of Florida on a full academic ride. And even there, I pursued medicine until I graduated. My undergraduate degree is actually a pre-med, like very human medicine focused program. And it wasn't until my very last semester of undergraduate, when I was in a surgical internship, I was assisting on Mohs surgery down in Miami, that I kind of started to feel like maybe this is not for me. You ever get a sort of a sick kind of feeling when you see blood and you're like, I reevaluated my career choices. And at the time, honestly, Julie, I felt very lost. You know, I had spent my entire life kind of working up towards a career that I thought I needed to be successful. I didn't see examples in my own life, or really, I didn't feel that other careers were accessible for me. All of a sudden, it was like, the whole world opened up. It was like, okay, well, if I'm not doing this, what am I going to do? And so that childhood fascination, again, with the ocean, with nature, with animals, kind of came back, because I was taking a leap no matter what. I was changing my career pretty late into the game. And by that point, we get into the pageantry side of it. So by the time I got into that internship, I knew that I was going to fly to the Philippines to compete in Miss Earth, one of the international beauty pageants of the world. And so I saw that as my opportunity. I said, if I'm going to make a name for myself, I have to do something really, really brave. And so while I was in the Philippines competing for Miss Earth, I actually launched an online educational campaign all about how coral reefs affect our health and how we affect the health of coral reefs. So I became really fascinated, still with medicine, but in a different way. It was more about how we impact the health of the environment and vice versa, how that impacts us as a population, as societies, and as a culture as well. And so that program that I launched got in front of about 250,000 people pretty quickly, with all the cameras rolling and all the eyes on that international convening. And from there, it actually got in front of the eyes of someone who's one of my greatest mentors, even still today, Dr. Dame Bedeau. So Dr. Dame Bedeau, who was the Caribbean coordinator of the ECOP program, yes, a UN Ocean Decade endorsed program that seeks to capacity build throughout the entire world and connect ECOPs, early career ocean professionals like myself, with more seasoned professionals to engage in that sort of exchange of knowledge and get a conversation going. And it also advocates for more inclusion of youth and ECOPs at every level of decision making with regards to ocean conservation. And so I joined on as Cuba's national coordinator. And from there, that is when I finally, after all that time, was first introduced to Mote. So looking at opportunities of how I could capacity build within this program, I landed on Dr. Damian Chapman's work, the actual head of our shark and ray research program here at Mote Marine Laboratory. And so I had a meeting with him to discuss the work he had done in Cuba with shark conservation. And from that meeting, he very kindly gave me a few tickets to go into Mote and actually experience the aquarium for the first time. And that was my first introduction to Mote, was that meeting, and then getting to wander around by myself and really experience it firsthand. And what stood out to me, even in those early days, that early introduction, was really the commitment to the research, right? It was the fact that the aquarium was a public arm to share the conservation messaging, to share the research, and to bring the science to the people. And from there, that's really what my career became. And so it wasn't until about a year later or so that I actually started working at Mote. Up until that time, I was continuing my work with that UN Ocean Decade program, and I got to do some really wonderful things, including youth. So I represented the program at the UN conference that was in Barcelona later that year. I taught 2 semesters of tropical marine ecology with the focus on scientific communication alongside other professors like Dr. Dave Badeau and Dr. Ebanks at Savannah State University. We even took them out to Jamaica to experience that ecology firsthand and really open barriers until finally an opening reared its head in the education department at Mote. And I was plotting on this. So I submitted my application right away. And although the department ultimately determined that it wasn't quite the right fit for that role, I made such an impression, or I would hope so, that they actually created a position for me here at the aquarium, and I've been here ever since. And now I get to do what I love every day, you know, and we get to put on programs just like this to continue advocating for inclusion of youth, really in every section of conservation, and lending the hand that empowers others and really opens the door for even more youth that might have unconventional backgrounds or might not be sure of what their career could be or what it should look like. To be able to find that pathway for themselves. So I'm really, really proud to be here at Mote, and even more so proud to be sitting here with you, Julie, and getting to do what it is that we do.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so I love what you said, Sheyla, too, about listening to your gut and pivoting when you knew you needed to. And you're probably like me from the standpoint that science is the lens through which you see the world. Like that's, I think, what I heard you saying is that when I was really young, I recognized that I just love science so much. I really love questions. And if you are at the age listening and you are high school age and starting to get into what comes next, whether that's trade school, whether that's college, university, whether that's, you know, going into professional career or whatever, entrepreneurship, whatever that is for you. For me, the biggest shift was understanding that all of a sudden that science from a learned topic changes, because really science is far more about questions than it is about answers. I mean, everything that Mote stands for is about discovery. My favorite conversation is asking the Mote scientists, some of whom I'm blessed to have in my family. They really started and finished their careers here. When I ask a scientist, what are you excited about? What do you want to know more about? And the answer is usually, well, I'm excited about my next experiment. I'm excited about my next question. And so recognizing that science shifts from how do I get an A or a B to, or a C or a D, whatever. But it shifts to like, oh, wait a minute. You want me to design the experiment? Wait, actually proving a hypothesis is disproving a hypothesis. And this is the same thing with leadership. This is why it's all stitched together in my brain. But before we talk about that too, I just want to, again, reinforce what you're saying, Sheyla, because it's so important, because I talk to so many people who are in that 15 to 20-year-old range who are either worried or nervous because they're looking around and it seems like everyone else already knows what they're going to do with their life or career or both. Or they're in whatever program that they're in, again, trade school, college, university, whatever it is. And they're like, I don't think this is for me.
Oh, absolutely, Julie. And we talk about that scientist mindset, right? If science is the lens through which we see the world, that's a really resilient mindset to approach things from. Because in science, there's times where we start an experiment and we're asking a question, right? We have a hypothesis. But there actually ends up being some sort of discovery along the way, or something we're seeing in the data that actually lets us know that we're asking the wrong question entirely. And then you pivot and you find out new things. And even some of the greatest scientific discoveries that have ever come to be, like, were discovered completely on accident. Right. And so it's hard to know everything that you're going to be and everything you're going to become, even as early as this in your life. And so if you're feeling like you don't have all the answers yet, or you're looking around and saying, I don't know, I'm not feeling like any one of the boxes that's been presented to me really suits what it is I want to do, or doesn't quite feel like a right fit, know that it's always okay to blaze your own path. I mean, with the span of one decision, and we've both done it, right? We've pivoted our careers. We've taken bold moves. You can change the trajectory of your life and know that you can go down a road and it can teach you many lessons and it can be very fulfilling. And even then there might come a time where you pivot again. And so that scientist mindset of wanting to learn, it's what am I going to learn in this new experience? What is that I want to try out next? What is something I want to practice? I think is a really good basis to operate from, especially if you're in that kind of space where you're like, I'm not quite exactly sure what it is I'm wanting to do. Asking questions, experimenting, and just doing it, having that bias to action a lot of times is enough to, if not even just get the ball moving, really get you where it is that you're going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, that moment came at 3 o'clock in the morning, as many moments come at 3 o'clock in the morning, I guess. But really it was 3 o'clock in the morning and I was on my second internship here at Mote Marine Laboratory because I'd done the education part. And then I really wanted to jump in and see, like, let me try this be a scientist bit because I love it so much. And so I joined the aquaculture program. So we were really trying to figure out what snook, which is a very popular game fish down here in Florida, what snook were eating at a young age. And so we could help keep the population stable and healthy. And so we needed broodstock. We needed fish to lay eggs. Right. And then we're going to bring the eggs to the research laboratory that I was working in, and then put a number of eggs in each aquarium and then mini aquarium, and then figure out what they ate over time. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, we got the call that it's time to go get the eggs because everything has been fertilized and laid and et cetera. So off we go to get the eggs. And then our job was to very quickly count under the microscope to make sure that we had the right number of eggs in each of the mini aquarium habitats. And I had never seen a fish egg under a microscope before. And I was just like, are you kidding me? There's a drop of oil in here. That's how it floats. And this is how it grows. And I was literally talking to myself. I'm like, I'm so excited. This is amazing. And then all my other intern counterparts were saying, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. Can you please just finish counting the fish eggs so we can go home? Because we have like 40 aquariums to fill up. I'm like, but I see. Maybe I'm not cut out to be an actual scientist. Maybe I'm meant to share lessons. Whether that's sharing lessons about actually what nature is all about, or then interpreting it, because that lens through which I see the world, science, actually started melding a little bit with the leadership lens. So when I was a younger professional, I was just so enamored by what the natural world wanted to teach me. And I still am. But the older I've gotten now, I feel like I have a pair of goggles on that when I look at the natural world, all I see is leadership lessons, because all I'm doing is looking around. I'm like, oh, I feel so much better, or I'm excited, or I'm inspired, or, oh, I'm not supposed to know what I'm supposed to do. And that's what nature tells me all the time, is like, no, you're just supposed to be. In fact, my new tagline literally for my business is, because nature never asks you to be anyone other than who you are.
Oh, I love that. Julie, I love that. No, that's such a beautiful takeaway. And so with that tagline, nature never asks you to be anything other than you truly are. I can see those lessons so beautifully echoed in the book. And I have a few copies of your book here, so I'll hold one up. But Wisdom from the Wild, Tales with Tales for Youth. And so that lesson of never having to be anyone except who you actually are, I guess I'd like to ask, prior to coming to Mote, or prior to making that discovery that led to the creation of your first book and now the second book, along with the help of your wonderful children, Asmund and Kepler, what is it that you knew about leadership, or what did you feel like? What did you think you know? And how did that change to now what it is that is here in your book?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I told you that I started life as a very shy individual. In fact, if I were to show you my preschool photo, it looked like this. And that was it. And that's just how I'm built. And so as I grew up and I had different experiences, I started to figure out, oh, I'm kind of interested in this, but I don't know if I want to try it. And I was not the natural person to step up and take the lead, but I always had a strong sense of, this is who I am and I'm good with that, but maybe I should try on this personality as we do, as we get older. But I kind of went through life trying to figure out, well, no one's really telling me, oh, Julie, you're such a fantastic leader, right? I wasn't exhibiting, let's say, those stereotypical leadership qualities. No one was telling me I wasn't a leader. Everyone was just kind of like, and to be fair, I ended up becoming a leader on the tennis team, and I was captain of the cheerleaders. And so and part of the show choir. I mean, I did have some, again, stereotypical leadership roles, but I didn't really know what it was all about. But I am a child of two entrepreneurs. My mom was a teacher and then later had her own business tutoring children. So her passion is in education. And then my dad was a leadership professional. He started his career in the steel mills. And then I watched him as the steel mills went bankrupt. I watched him start his own business. So I literally learned at the feet of my parents. And I would think about, okay, I'm this science kid. but I'm interested in how people learn, and I'm interested in how people lead. And I don't know really what I don't know about all of that. But what happened is when I was 17 years old, I got to go on a business trip with dad. And business trip with dad was sitting in a training room. And really for the first time, he stood at the front of the training room. And it was a really tough group because it was a company that had just come off a year-long strike. And so the managers were sitting on one side and the workers were sitting on the other side. And my dad's first step in leadership development was create a positive environment. And I watched these people like, well, it's that person's responsibility. Well, it's this person's responsibility. And I remember thinking, oh, this is not as easy as it seems, because we treat leadership as something that either you're born to do and you know how to do it, or then suddenly you get a promotion or someone gives you a title that has leader in it, or sometime somewhere in the job description. And all of a sudden, okay, well, now I just know how to do it. And we treat it as a soft skill.
Yes.
And that's not it. Like, to keep booger in this tank, in this habitat, you have to know how to build said habitat. It has to not leak water. It has to know what kind of water do you need? What temperature do you need? Are these mangroves alive or are they not? And what does that mean? And how do you feed booger? I mean, all these things are the technical aspect of how to keep an animal in a habitat, in an aquarium. But then also the people side of this is, okay, if you and I are responsible for this, how do I make sure that you're doing the same thing as me? And how do you know how to, like put this together? Because I could have manufactured it in Colorado.
And that you have the tools to do what it is that you need to do.
All the things, right? So all of this to say that I didn't really know what leadership was, and I didn't really know what it wasn't. All I knew was all of a sudden I was interested because I recognized that leadership is a skill. It's a critical thinking activity. Yeah. It is not something you're born with, but it's also not a list of bullet points. Like, I really want you to read my book. Like, I'm excited for you to read this book, but I really hope by the time you read this book, you have more questions than you do answers. I want to teach you in the education space. We call this leadership by inquiry. I really want to teach you how to think, not what to do necessarily. So that was my leadership journey. I don't know how that dovetails with how you came to leadership as you were growing.
No, it's beautiful. And Julie, every time you talk, I love the nuggets of wisdom that come about too. And they're so comforting. And I say that as someone that, because again, we've had these big career pivots and at times, and we maybe didn't know what it is that we should exactly do, but we had interest. And it's like, well, how do I get from where I am to where I think I might want to be? And I guess in both of our cases, Julie, what it sounds like to me is that it was just taking the first step. It was action. It was following the passions, following the curiosity, following the questions that came up in our minds. And so I also really want you to read Julie's book. Because, yes, sometimes the best input is that internal curiosity. It's not necessarily what we feel like, okay, well, I'm already great at this, because we just established that leadership is not a soft skill. It's not this innate trait, but it's rather a process. And it's something that takes constant sharpening and is evolving through different phases of life. And very much like you, Julie, I couldn't quite put into words who I thought a leader was or what made someone a leader, but I could kind of look around at a young age and I would feel presence. Right. I would look to my teachers who were advocating for us and were, doing their best every single day, getting up in front of the classroom and just putting their heart and soul into trying to give us a good quality education and say, okay, I want to be like that person. I would look at my parents and especially of my mom and how strong she is and how she navigated all of life's, different things that come about just with so much grace and with compassion. And I knew I wanted to be like that. I would look at, especially from the pageantry aspect, I would look at the woman that I saw on the screen and say, they're speaking so beautifully, like, oh, I want to do that someday. I want to be up there. And as I got older and I continued to follow those curiosities, it wasn't really until, like you said, I stopped asking the question of, okay, like, who do I need to become in order to be this person or be this leader, but rather asking, like, who am I? What do I like about myself? And following that accepting myself and really leaning into what it was that were my strengths and following those curiosities that then got me to achieving a lot of those goals and led me to where I am today. And so I think that's a really important ground that we've set as we continue to talk about leadership, and especially youth leadership, and acknowledging that it doesn't always look exactly like what we think it does. And oftentimes what we regard as leadership, or what we put a name to as leadership, isn't what the true reality of it is. And that's lesson 1 from the book, right? Great leadership is a myth. The reality is so much better. And so with that, I know you've prepared some games for us today to explore.
I have squid fingers on. I'm going to give you squid fingers, and I will
happily accept them. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, if you hear nothing else from us today, I really want you to take everything we're saying and think about it as, we want you, no matter how old you are, no matter where you are in your life or your career, we want you to become more of who you are. Like, period. If we're saying things that don't fit what you agree with, fantastic. Push back, disagree, let us know. And we want to have that discussion. This is how leadership is advanced, and this is how leadership really sticks, right? And my teenagers who I wrote this book with, I mean, part of the reason why I wanted to do this together with them is because they are very, very different people. They're only 18 months apart. They're very close. We're like the Three Musketeers most of the time. But my daughter right now, she's a freshman at Florida Gulf Coast University here in Fort Myers, Florida. She actually had an internship already at Mote last summer. She interned in a chemistry laboratory. And so that's what she's studying right now. She's studying chemistry. She has an internship at college. She's studying astrophysics, and she may pick up environmental science. And she is a natural extrovert. She's a natural person who just wants to talk to all the people all the time. And so what happens is many people will say to her, "Oh, you're such a great leader. You have all these leadership skills. You're doing fantastic." And that's a true statement. But either A, she doesn't always want to pick up that leadership baton just because she is the extrovert and the natural person to do it. Now she will. It's like a vacuum in nature, right? Like a leadership vacuum. Tasman is going to go towards the center of the room or towards the microphone, but she doesn't always want that responsibility. And I don't want you to hear that extrovertedness is bad. That is not what I want you to hear at all. But I do want you to hear that many times we think about extrovertedness as equated with, I am a leader. And that's just, as you're looking at the sharks on the screen right now, one of the things to think about, we all lead in our different ways. There's some things that you have to know how to do, some skills, but it's not related to how you interact with people. So I want to tell you, and I know I have my squid fingers on, so it's very distracting, but I want to also tell you about my son, Kepler, who is 16, and he's a junior in high school right now. And he is a natural introvert. That's the lens through which he interacts. That's how he sees the world. Now, to be fair, he's also a clown in the circus, a professional clown. He's made money from it already. And so he can perform in front of thousands of people. So don't let me tell you a lie that just because he's an introvert, he can't be in front of people. But if he were here in this conversation with us, Sheyla, this would not be his natural comfort zone. Right. However, so he's an artist. He loves entertainment, theme, and design. He loves drawing. He loves building things. He loves any button that he can push, even when he's not supposed to. But what happens with Kepler is people do not always tell him that he is a leader. And people don't always think that he's going to step up and be that leader. But as I've watched him over his life, the ways that he interacts and the ways he leads, I think that he actually has a different advantage. Yeah. Or maybe not an advantage, just a different perspective, right? Because he's flying under the radar screen, but he is super dialed in and paying attention. So I want you to just think about that, because that's that when you read the book or just interact with us, you're going to hear 3 distinct voices, and that's on purpose, because we want you to be able to identify and connect with people. So that's a really big lead up into our game, which is called Don't Argue with a Giant Squid.
Okay.
I mean, because why would you?
Right, exactly. If I was faced with, one of the largest eyes in the animal kingdom, I don't know that my natural instinct would be to argue with said organism, right?
Yeah, no, I would not advise it. So the reason why this game is don't argue with the giant squid. So this is kind of like an improv game. Like Sheyla knows what she's going to do, but I have no idea what she's going to say, and she has no idea which prompt she's going to pull out of my box of prompts here. But she's got her squid fingers and squid fingers. Squid does. I'm in spirit. She's ready. Tentacles. But when you jump in the deep sea, or really any part of the ocean, but if you think about the ocean, if you're a trained scuba diver, you maybe could go down 100, 120 feet. But the average depth of the ocean is 4 miles, goes down almost 7 miles, depends on who's measuring, because that science has changed over the time. But, giant squid for a long time, we knew existed, but we'd never really seen alive or actually in its natural habitat. Yeah. So this is to tell you that every time you are faced with a different decision, a different opportunity to lead, it's just like jumping back in your ocean and looking for giant squids. So
for sure.
Sheyla is going to get to pick a prompt out of my box. She's going to close her eyes, and then she's going to react on the spot to think about, does this match her as a leader? And if not, can she think about a leader in her life that this reminds her of?
And I feel around with my squid finger. All right, and I'm grabbing. And I'm trying not to make a mess. Ooh, okay. Rule breaker. And I feel like I shouldn't even point it at myself, because I'm very much not. I would like to think I am, and be because I feel like I associate it with being cool, taking the risk. And there's definitely times in my life where I have been brave and I've taken risks, and I've made a leap. But overall, I'm very much a rule follower. I'm someone that loves math and I love science, and so that, given that that's the lens I see the world through, I'll very much, if someone asks me a question, I'm like, all right, and I run calculations to give you the most practical, precise answer. And it's a guesstimate was fine. And that's a strength in some circles, but I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a rule breaker, although there's great value in being the one that kind of shakes up the status quo and is able to make those calls. So I'm thinking of someone in my life that would be a rule breaker.
Yeah, so while you're thinking, I'm going to have to push back and challenge you here. That's what we do.
Please do.
Why do you equate risk-taking with being a rule breaker?
Ooh, well, that's a great question, Julie. And I think for me, given that, I grew up in a slightly different culture from where I am now, I think the ideal, behavior, at least that was marketed to me, or what was correct was agreeable, being pleasant and sit still, look pretty, sort of a kind of concept. And so the taking risk and being that rule breaker, I always associate it with these really cool, and even I guess I associate it with women more than anything too, women that have really had that courage to shake up the scene. And so I actually think of one of my childhood heroes in music, actually. Her name was Thalia. Okay. And I loved this woman. I loved this woman. She, in the early 90s, so she's a Mexican pop star. And in the early 90s, she was really rule breaking with her music. She was going out of what was expected at the time with fashion, with her art, with the music. And I would, watch those music videos and her interviews on loop over and over again, because I just thought she was so cool. And it was the daring, the courageousness, the I don't know, being so self-assured that she wasn't worried about going against the grain or coming off abrasive, but just being exactly who she was and expressing herself through art how she wanted and through fashion, that I just thought was so, so awesome. And even in my life today, I take style inspiration from her. And so, yeah, I think about, the woman, it's that quote that well-behaved women really make history, the women that were not afraid to push back. And so in some ways I've embodied that, but yeah, I guess I look to my heroes as being those women that weren't afraid to push the status quo and make progress.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to have Sheyla pick another prompt here, but as we're picking this, I want you to think about that. Are you a rule breaker? Would you identify with that? What does it mean to be a rule breaker? And does it have a negative connotation? Should it have a negative connotation? And whether that's your cultural perspective, whether that's your age perspective, whether that's whatever that perspective is, and this is a judgment-free zone, but this is a safe but not comfortable zone. So I really want you to lean in and think about that. All right, so let's see if we can talk about one more prompt here.
And I'll remove my squid finger just for dexterity purposes.
Yes, that's a good idea.
I think I grabbed something.
Okay.
Ooh, creating my own adventure. Okay, I'd say this definitely does apply to me, especially given that we talked about background and feeling like initially in my life, success had, a first and a last name. Okay. It had a very, very narrow window of what it could look like, but pushing past that and now getting to do everything that I've done. I've traveled the world a few times over, and I've gotten to really accomplish things even beyond my wildest dreams. And what was the start of it was not fearing, or rather pushing past the fear of doing something new and following those curiosities and taking the risk. Traveling by myself, by the way, the first time I ever traveled was to go to the Philippines for that competition. And I got on a plane about to do 30 something hours completely by myself to the other side of the world for the very first time at 22 years old. And now you would never know, right? I have no hesitation to get on an airplane and go travel somewhere. But at the time it was so scary. And I won't lie and say it didn't come without tears. And creating my own adventure. And that's what I feel like I'm on now, really in my own career here at Mote, and even in the adventure of getting to open this new building. I actually did all of the Spanish translations for the scientific content that you see here around the Mote Science Education Aquarium. And so it's bridging the gap for others, having the courage to have pushed the boundaries, and now getting to use a lot of my skill set to open those doors for other people. And when I think of creating my own adventure, I also think of, the people that came before me and other leaders in Mote, like Eugenie Clark. In doing that translation, I can't tell you how many photographs, like how much history about her I had to review and go over. And one of the things that really stuck out to me, and you see this a lot in books that are written about her, was, she loved aquariums, right? She went to the New York Aquarium every single day and looked into that shark tank and saw not just sharks, but her future. And she was adamant from a young age that was what she wanted to do. She was very self-assured. She knew her purpose, even from that very young age. But that doesn't change the fact that it was at a time where that wasn't expected, especially not of young women, especially not of young Asian American women that were in the US. She really was so self-assured enough to say, she would tell her parents, one day I want to be like a great explorer, great ocean explorer. And even at the time, and you can hear it in our magic book that's upstairs that shows the story of her life, even her mom would push back, kind of say, maybe if you study really hard, one day you could be the secretary to a great explorer like William Beebe, who was her hero at the time. And she really created her own adventure. She was on the ground level testing like the new scuba technologies that came out, and she was doing ocean research and shark research at a time where it was solely carried out by the military, because so much of our ocean was unexplored. Think about how much is still unexplored now. Imagine all those years ago. And so creating your own adventure. And if you find yourself at a point in your life at any time where it's when you're thinking about these next steps, and especially for our teens, for the age group that is intended to be reached by this newest book, there's all those questions of what comes next, whether it's trade school, whether it's college, whether it's entrepreneurship or forging your own path. And if it's any of those, which is the right path to go? What's the right major? How do I do X, Y, and Z? Know that if you follow those curiosities, and if you are confident in yourself, and if you approach life with that lens of, what do I want to learn? What do I want to try out right now? Your own adventure will unfold before you. And it might be completely different than what you expected, but it'll be where you're meant to end up. And so, especially when it comes to YOCS, the Youth Ocean Conservation Summit that we said is taking place here on November 15th, that is what we're trying to help people do. Okay. So what we're trying to help this youth do. And we have a graphic thrown up on the screen there. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to the registration to participate in this year's event. But one thing that I really tried to do in the organizing of this event is show a multitude of different paths within conservation. Because even if you think, all right, I want to do something in conservation, there's so many different things you can do. And we talked about those different types of leadership, right? Your extrovert, Tasman, who is very much go, 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 and people almost look in the room to her and expect that leadership. Whereas your more kind of quiet confidence in Kepler and having a different skill set. So in this year's Yachts, we explore everything from biological illustration to, of course, youth leadership with you, Julie, to marine ecology, to ocean technology and engineering, and all these different paths. And so we encourage you to, if you are at that point in your life where you're thinking about next steps, come over this way and we can really help you at least be exposed to those different avenues, and you can try on different ones and see what fits.
Yeah, and to build off of that, I picked a prop as well, and mine says empathy is a leadership superpower. And so for me, this is one of my favorite tales in the book, but it builds off of what Sheyla was talking about with Eugenie Clark's story. And I was fortunate enough to meet her, to work alongside her, to present with her, to do yoga next to her at the lab. She came to my wedding. Tasman sold her Girl Scout cookies. Kepler sat on her couch in her lab. And what impressed me all the time about Jeannie was two things. One, this is like a teaching hospital. Mote has always been a teaching hospital to me in mindset, because she always was wanting to share not just her passion, but her questions and her curiosity with young people coming into the field or just walking next to the ocean, even if they wanted to become an accountant and work in New York City and not have anything to do with necessarily directly with the ocean. She wanted to connect people. But the second thing is, I probably could count on one hand out of the years and years I knew her, really almost a couple decades that I knew her, I think I called her Dr. Clark one time, maybe a couple more than that, but just on one hand. And that is because she was so comfortable in who she was, and she didn't need not only to hide behind her degrees and her accomplishments, but she also didn't need them to first walk in the room. And what that means is empathy is a leadership superpower. That means that walking alongside someone is how you show empathy. And I can't relate to her story because thankfully times had started to shift by the time I had come into the world. And so I had more access to careers than she did at a younger age, but I can still empathize with her journey and walk next to her, even though I can't directly understand it. But the other thing that she was showcasing with that was the poison dart frog lesson in the book, which is how you show up is how you lead. So I really want you to think about when you are in spaces, no matter what that space is, however you decide to enter that space, occupy that space, whether it's sitting at a table literally, or working in a chemistry laboratory, or sitting with Sheyla, how I show up is how I lead, which means I want to be present, I want to be interested, I want to be dialed in, and I don't need to hide behind all of the degrees I have or what title I have or anything like that. I can just show up as me, and that's enough. And that's what Jeannie modeled for me, is that she just was so comfortable and confident in her impact and influence on the world. And she knew that she could connect to people and represent sharks in a new way as she needed to, because they had such a negative perception at the time. And I really left such a lasting legacy for all of us in so many ways. But to me, that's the piece.
It's Eugenie Clark and Dr. Eugenie Clark. But as you said, to know her was absolutely love her, even on a realm, a level that goes so far beyond Eugenie Clark, the scientist, right? She was such an incredible woman, even until her last day. The magnitude of her presence, I mean, resonates all throughout Mote and throughout this building, especially even now. And so I just, it feels like being here is part of being something that's bigger than yourself.
Yes.
And that legacy of empowering others to do the same. I mean, being one of the largest nonprofit, of course, and independent research laboratories in the US, like this is Dr. Clark's legacy. This is what she created. And so scientists from all backgrounds, walks of life, come here to do really impactful work and to share that with the world. And it's the depth of her work, her contributions, not only to science, but to mankind, is something that humbles me continuously and continues to do so. And so glad you brought that up, Julie. And we've been talking a bit about different leadership tales in the book. And so I guess one of the questions that I want to end on really is asking you, why did you write this book? Following the success of Wisdom from the Wild, your first book, why did you want to write Wisdom from the Wild for youth?
Well, the most direct answer is because when I wrote the first book, I had young people or adults buying it for young people in their lives who were then saying to me, this is great, but it's not necessarily as relatable for people who are not yet in 10 years into their career, 20 years into the career, et cetera. Because certainly they're able to relate, but the examples were slightly different.
Right.
That's the on paper answer. The real answer is I recognize that it took me back to my roots, and it took me back to inspiring young people. And I had 2 young people I am actively responsible for. And if I can continue to inspire them, I mean, honestly, when I wrote this book with my children, that was enough. Like, if I don't sell any copies of this book, my opportunity to learn more about them for 16 months that it took us to write this book. And when I say write this book, sometimes it was like, okay, you guys, just like text me what you want to say in this chapter. We don't have to like sit in front of a computer and answer, right? It was a journey in itself. But that bonding experience with my children was enough. And I hope you get the sense of that as well. Like, this is not an exercise in checking boxes for us in any means. We really poured our heart and soul into this book. And I hope people feel that and feel how much we want to raise the tide so all boats are lifted, and really see people for where they are. I mean, really, that's my heart. That's our heart. And so that's why we wrote it. That's why we work hard to make it accessible for everybody and to continue to level the leadership playing field. And it's a conservation Trojan horse, because there are enough lessons in here that I know someone's going to pick it up and be like, oh, I didn't know that about bighorn sheep, or I didn't know that about sharks. I'm like, okay, now I gotcha through the leadership lens.
No, I love that, Julie. And of course, your passion for leadership, but also, like you said, raising the tide so all boats can float is palpable, right? And it exudes in all of the work you do. And that's why I'm so grateful to have you here today as my co-host for this presentation, but also to be welcoming you back here on November 15th for the Youth Ocean Conservation Summit. I don't know about you, but the hour that we had feels like it just flew by. And I want more of you. And I'm sure our viewers do as well. And I can speak from personal experience that the lessons in this book, it's almost as if you took all these hard fought lessons, right? Because we said this is not something that's innate.
Yeah.
Okay. And you wrap them into here. And it's like, I can only imagine if we had gone back to that first pivotal point, right? We said the realization sunk in for us. For you, it was like 3 a.m. as you were looking at eggs under a microscope.
Yeah.
For me, mid-surgery.
Yeah.
And if I'd known now all that hard fought wisdom that came from trying and failing and a lot of stress and sleepless nights and wondering like what it is that I'm going to do, and know that it would all be okay, but also all of the lessons that are contained here in this book. If I knew that back then, how would things have been different? And so being able to pick up this book wherever it is that you might be at your life, and whether you are a reader who is young yourself, and this is something you're going to implement into your own life, or whether you have young people in your life that you really care about and you want to equip them with the tools to be the best selves that they can be. This is such a good tool to do so, Julie. And so, like I said, I can't thank you enough for being here today. I can't thank you enough for having the opportunity to welcome you back. And so if you've taken anything away from this podcast, webinar style show that we've been doing is, you don't have to learn every hard lesson by yourself. You can lean on the resources that are in front of you. And that's what we are trying to equip young people with today through opportunities like, of course, Wisdom of the Wild for youth, Leadership Tales with Tales, and the Youth Ocean Conservation Summit. And so I have no doubt that we've touched the hearts of viewers that are out here today, and also maybe then people who will go on to be mentors to this youth as well and continue to raise the tide so all boats can float. What do you say, Julie?
I say that no matter how old you are a leader already. And I want you to stand tall on that. Don't wait for someone to tell you that you are. Stand up.
Yes. And it is not that our youth are the leaders of tomorrow, but rather they are leaders today.
For sure.
As they are, they're also the change makers of today. And so from myself and from Julie as well, thank you everyone for tuning in today, joining us here at Mote. Until next time that we see you, remember, you are a leader just as you are.